Is there some trick to being happy? Probably the title of the video. I consider myself a happy person, but what does that really mean? Maybe not happy, but joyous on any occasion I can be. But with that comes, of course, low points. I'm a realist. I live life. I don't just pretend to float through it. Not everything is unicorns and rainbows. But that line, is there some trick to being happy? It's from a song. It's more of a modern song. It's not that old. In the last decade or so, I think. By the Bahamas. I don't know anything about the band or the guy that wrote it. I did see him playing it with a song with his son once on a video, but all I know is the video came on, or the audio came on one time, I think Spotify or somewhere, and I said, this song, I get it. And part of the song says, is there some trick to being happy? Most days I'm feeling like I'm half me. I feel that life is moving past me. I only told you because you asked me. Now, you can interpret lyrics any way you want. I don't go into the Robert Hunterism. He wrote a lot for the Grateful Dead, but they had a lot of writers that had John Barlow and various dudes who had some serious acid trips and wrote some crazy lyrics, and trying to decipher those, it's kind of like you know, the pinnacle of having writers that write songs that are just out of this world. But some songs are very down to earth and basic, like that one. And the point is pretty easy to perceive, if you will. Going on about, I'll be 48 this year, so getting close to 50 is a weird feeling, hitting the half century mark. Remembering when I met my wife when I was 23, over half my life spent with her and her son and raising my other kids, and just developing this sense of family and connection to the world that is different than what I had before. But I've spent half my life in family mode already. Well, hell, I guess I was in my own family until I left when I was 18. So honestly, I've always been in family mode. I've never lived on my own or anything. I lived with friends for a few years, but during that time I tried to figure out what life's all about, like everyone does when they're young. What should I do? Should I hang out on Hawthorne Boulevard in this big house and party all the time? Should I go on a road trip somewhere? My friend Tim and I discussed traveling together around the world, and I thought, this is not feasible, but I might. Let's do it, And around that time, I met my wife, and long story short, I decided to stay. This was in '98 to 2000 when we got together. We got together Christmas of '98, but um, so this will be our 25th year together. But I had thought about traveling, and I said no, I'm going to settle down and just chill instead. And my friend ended up traveling the world. He married somebody from Ukraine, I thought. No, she wasn't from Ukraine. She was from somewhere over there. Maybe she was from Ukraine. But anyway, he met somebody and married, and then ended up settling down and having to kind of buckle down and do all the things that he didn't want to do before, that I didn't want to do before. Owning a house, dealing with, you know, uh, mortgages and bills and plumbing issues and all the problems that come with being a homeowner. And I've lived in my house for over 20 years now, so, or about 20 years rather. So it's got a lot of problems of its own we've had to fix and still do. And so the whole, like what a lot of people call quote adulting, I hate that word, but you know, it is pretty applicable when you think about it. It's not just that being an adult means you have to be responsible. It means you have to buy into this complete delusion that society is run a certain way because it's normal, and that everybody has to do the same thing. And I went to school here, so you should go to school here, and you should learn what I learned. You know, that's kind of falling by the wayside, but that's only because those jobs don't exist, and the new ones that exist now probably won't exist in 10 years. It's a weird time to, you know, I guess, be alive, if you will. And this comes down to why a lot of young people claim to be unhappy and want to know the trick to be happy. Not just young people, but all of us. But young people especially are vulnerable. They need to build confidence. And if you're, from 15 to 25 and you're still trying to find yourself, and all you hear from people is, oh, these jobs won't exist and this doesn't matter and life doesn't matter, and it's like it just sinks in and people just become nihilistic and cynical. It's not healthy, not good for a society. And I find myself doing that, getting more cynical as I hear more bullshit. Perhaps this comes with age. Perhaps this is just something that I'm facing because I'm at a certain age in my life and I'm just done with the bullshit. But it's more than that, because I was done with the bullshit long before this. I've not been one to, you know, bullshit people. I like honesty. I think it's important. And that gets me in some trouble. So, to the trick to being happy, that old saying, happy wife, happy life. It's funny because that popped up the other night and I thought about this, like, yeah, whatever, people, both sexes have to be happy, both parties. But at the same time, understanding the psychology of men and women, the differences we have, and yes, there are differences, and women are much more prone to really appreciate a rose and a card, whereas a guy is going to appreciate completely different things. Maybe a trip camping or something. And this is in the very, rough, rudimentary version of men and women, of course. But the fact is, this is more prevalent than people realize. Uh, Guys are guys, girls are girls, and this has nothing to do with anyone who claims to be in between. The discussion needs to be had, because happiness for men and women who are married, for example, hetero couples, it relies on both parties respecting each other's boundaries, but also accepting that there will be times of difficult turmoil, grief. It can be very hard to navigate those things. And for some folks, especially when they're young, they think, well, I'm not happy right now. I must be unhappy in my relationship, or I must be unhappy at my job, or whatever it might be. Completely misunderstanding that they're unhappy for other reasons, because it bleeds into our life. There are many different aspects. I should do a whole video, just break this down and write down all the notes that I wanted to share, but you know, there are so many different aspects. You have to have a happy home life. You have to have a happy wife, or a happy husband, or parents, or kids, or whoever you live with. You have to take time to make friends. You have to nurture those friendships. You have to, as my buddy says, water the garden, water the friendship garden. I love it. Um, and I have a few good friends, but it's hard to maintain sometimes. But you've got to do it. And you also, to be happy, I believe the person has to eat the proper food, of course, not take too many drugs, be able to pace themselves and know what to consume. The things we put in our body really make who we are. And then, very importantly, is our environment. If we're around negative people all the time, it's just going to continue to build resentment within us. We'll harbor resentment for everyone, because we need to feel like we're in control of our own lives at least a little bit. And a lot of people have very controlling people around them. This isn't just like spouses. This can be parents. This can even be kids over their parents. This can be, any very unhealthy relationship where a person feels like they're, a victim, but they really are getting treated horribly. Because everyone's a victim today, right? If you even argue with some people, they like cower. You're like, what? I'm just disagreeing, but you're hurting my feelings. It's like, I'm a little bit resentful of how dumb people have gotten in the arguments that we make and the discussions we have. But I still hold out hope that times will change, and I think maybe psychedelics could help. But that's my rant for the moment. And as for the happiness part, what is the trick to be happy? Is that what you came for? You think I know? It's as I said, it depends on who you are, what you do, where you come from, where you're going, what your intentions are, what job do you have, what are your friendships like, what are your well, relationships in general, and I think we all got to look at that shit ourselves, kind of self psychoanalyze, if you will, realize when we're being chumps, because sometimes I'm a chump. It's hard to admit, but you do it and you move on. Anyway, this chump's out. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for coming along, and Patreon and all that stuff, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.